Here we go. Let me start all over. Okay, everybody. Yep. Okay, Susan Gillette here with us today, and she is with the Citizens Climate Lobby group in West Texas. It's a national group. Susan's a big player in it, and she has literally moved mountains with activism in climate change. And we both were talking that just the other day. And I'm not going to go into a long spiel because I want to let her talk to you guys, but she literally has gotten one of the most conservative House representatives in the world, probably, and I'm pretty sure, to actually start to really focus on wind and wind energy. And so, and this is an oil-rich area that depends on oil, not that different than Harlan County, Chris. So it's in terms, not coal there, oil here. So this is a pretty amazing thing because this is not an area that wants to budge in anything. And they just think it's always been that way, don't change it. So Susan, with that, not to go on too long, Susan has done a lot of research, worked with Catherine Hayhoe. She is got a degree in geology, which is really
Geography.
Geography. Sorry about that.
Sorry
about that. Yeah. And she loves graphs and charts. So, to talk about, which I knew you guys would love. So
and you will see. You will see. Yeah, I've got graphs and charts in there, but the first part is all graphs and charts, but just be patient. The art will come. So.
Well, actually, there is an art and graphs and charts. So we talked about that.
That's right.
So without too much further ado, Susan, welcome. Thank you for being here, and go ahead and do your talk.
Thanks. I am gonna do a share screen for my slide show. There we go. Can you see that?
Yep.
And
there we go.
There we go. And let's see if y'all come up. Okay, so CCL, Citizens Climate Lobby, is the organization I work with. And we are, somehow I'm not getting your little pictures over here. Anyway, I'm talking to my screen. We are a national nonpartisan nonprofit organization that works on climate legislation, and CCL is focused very clearly on getting national legislation for climate. And we are the only ones in this part of the state. There is nobody else out here that's working with CCL at all. So we've kind of expanded our view of what we want to do, what we're doing. And we not only do lobbying on the national level, we do it on the state level, and we also try to educate, any opportunity to educate people on climate of any sort. I'll step up to it. So here I am today. So yeah, I'm going to ask my husband to come over here and see if he knows how to get my little windows up here so I can see who I'm talking to. Do you know? I am on Zoom and I have a PowerPoint up, and why don't my little pictures come up here? Tell me, are you still all there? You know what? I wonder if yeah, they are there.
Yeah, we're here. There's an icon at the top that should have it.
Still sharing. I'm sorry, Jane. No, not that one. No, not there. It's this one over here.
Okay. Sorry. You were on this one.
Yeah.
No, I don't know why.
I don't know why.
The only thing
there it is. There it is. There it is. Thank you. Now I can see your faces, so I know I'm talking to real people, and you're still there, and I'm not. Yeah, right. Smile and nod every once in a while, so I know you're there. Thanks. So climate change, this is something we call, it's a simple issue. It's not hard to understand. It gets very complex when you get deep into it, but the basic concept is pretty simple. It's serious. The impacts are here. They're affecting us now. They're going to get a lot worse, but the problems we face are solvable. We have the technology to do that now. We just have to put it all in place and make it happen. So the first thing I'm going to do is start you off in, oh dear, honey, now it won't. Now I can't change my, oh, there it is. There it is. Okay, so I've got it. I've got it. I think so. Can you see my screen? Can you see
Yeah.
that's Big Earth? Okay. I don't know what I've done, but somehow it's funny. I got it. I got it. I got it. Thank you, honey. He's very good at this. He does this all the time too. So we're going to go into just the basic idea of what climate change is, how it works, because a lot of people, they know it's a problem, they know it's serious, but they don't really have a grasp of what makes what's making the earth get warmer. And so here's a little graphic about it. The sun sends energy to the earth and heat and light. It the earth soaks up that energy and then it reflects back off of it into space, some of that heat. And we have this atmosphere around, which is a really great thing, because if we didn't have the atmosphere, all that heat would go out and we'd freeze. So in the atmosphere, there are certain things in the atmosphere that hold on to that heat and reflect it back down. Some of those things, those are the so-called greenhouse gases. CO2, carbon dioxide is one of them. Methane is another major one, where those chemicals being in our atmosphere are taking more of that heat and reflecting it back down back to the earth. And the more CO2, the more methane we put into the atmosphere, the more it's going to get radiated down to us again. It's like putting an extra blanket on the earth to hold more heat in. Some of it still does get out, and it's just a matter of how much and how we stay within that equilibrium. So let's see if I can make this work again. There we go. So here's a graphic showing what CO2 has done for 400,000 years. And so this is a graph that shows you how CO2 has gone up and down over that 400,000 years. But all through that time, it has stayed below this line, just above 300 parts per million. And now since the Industrial Revolution, you can see that we have gone straight up. The CO2 we're putting in the atmosphere is going up and still going up. We're now at 414 parts per million, and the end is not in sight. But a lot of people and artists are, I kind of put you in that category, don't really understand this. This doesn't move you. This doesn't make you feel like you want to go out and do something. And so here again, this is only dated from 1000 to 2000. And here's the Industrial Revolution. And here again, our CO2 has gone straight up. And this chart, it shows you the temperature with it as well. The red line is the temperature and the blue line is the CO2. So I don't know if I'm going to have a problem. Okay, there. So this is an old chart. I just put up this red X up here. That's where we are now. That's how much it's changed since this chart was made in about 2000. That's a big difference. So here again, we're going to show you how this looks on a graph. This is what scientists understand. They show these graphs, and I have no idea how many people really understand what I'm showing them when I show them this. This is a graph, the going from time of what the global temperature is, and the blue ones are under the average and the red ones are above the average. So you can see that over time, we're really warming quite a bit. But as I say, I don't know if that makes any difference to anybody, if they can really, if that really gets to them whatsoever. So there are some graphic ways that do work better. I don't know if you're familiar with this. These are the climate stripes. And the blue line, the darker the blue line, the colder that year is. The redder the blue line, the redder lines are when it's above average. So they take the average over this time from 1850 to 2020 and say anything that's pink or red is above the average and anything that's blue is below. And it's a very good way to see that things are changing. And maybe this might be more accessible to more people. The same guy that did this one also did this one, and it will start in a minute. And it shows you in a circle. I hope it starts in a second. Did when I looked
Is it
at it
gonna,
before. There
oh,
we go.
there it goes. It
There it
moves.
goes. Anyway, the bigger the circle, the warmer that year is. And so you see by 2020, we're already pushing in some of the winter months out to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is what we're trying to keep within that realm. So here again, starting with the 1800s and going up 1900, and those circles keep getting larger and larger because this temperature gets warmer and warmer. And this is a better display for most people of how these things work. And some of this is a real art to putting together these kinds of graphs so they make sense. Now I want to talk to you about who we're concerned with and what's the general public perception of climate. And this is from the Yale Center on Climate Communication. They go around and do a survey every year of how people feel about climate issues. And they put this together to see what people feel about it. 26% of people are alarmed. They're really concerned. They think this is a threat that we need to do something about as soon as we can. 29% are concerned. 19% are cautious. It's like, yeah, well, maybe, do we really need to do anything about it? The disengaged know little about climate and global warming. They really don't even pay attention to it. Doubtful says, okay, maybe it's happening, but we don't know why, and maybe it's just a natural cycle. We'll ignore it and it'll go away. And the dismissives are the ones that say, this is a total hoax. We're not going to do anything about it at all because it's a hoax. Those crazy Democrats, those crazy scientists, whatever. So it's how do we get each group of people? How do we take that group of people? How do we talk to them and nudge them onto the next category and move them forward in their understanding of what's going on? So why aren't people really concerned with climate change? What is their problem? Why are we not getting through them? Well, one of the problems is disinformation and deception. That a lot of the corporate players, especially gas and oil industry, have been trying for decades to get people to think that this is not a problem or that they got a problem under control. You know, Exxon has been hiding their research for decades on why this is a problem. Then there's the idea that human brains are just not wired to see this as a danger. We're wired to see the tiger behind the tree and to run from an immediate danger, but that danger has got to be close to us. We got to see it. We got to know that it's now and that we can do something about it. But for most people, they say the problem, that they don't see the problem as being their problem. It's somebody else's problem. It's far away. It's not affecting them. It's not going to bother them. And besides that, if it's a problem later, they'll fix it. So I don't really care. And there's no one to blame for it. They don't have something they can fight against. It's just this thing out there. So they just don't worry about it. Then there's a lot of people who just don't like the solutions. You got a lot of people who are in control that say they don't want to see anything change. They like things the way they are and they don't want it to change. So they say it'll cost too much. We don't want to give up our fill in the blank vacations, hamburgers, big cars, all of the stuff that we buy. We don't want to give that up. And if it gets to that point, they say, oh, well, it's too late anyway. We can't do anything about it. But that's not true. We have the answers. We can do this. We just have to get on with it. So here's another one of those graphs. And I put this one up because it's the craziest one I could find. It's filled with a whole lot of information that scientists understand and the general public does not. It's a difference of how we comprehend how the information is given to us. Depends on our reactions to the information depends on how well we can access it. And this is not very accessible to most people. This one's a little better. Maps are generally pretty good. I, as a geographer, love maps, but a whole lot of people don't. I've given up on my daughter ever figuring out which way is north on a map. And so I understand this doesn't get a lot of people, but it does some. So what's more accessible to most people? Well, if you give them a picture and you say, this is what drought looks like. And I think I pulled this picture up from Arizona. So it should be something that's talking to the people there. They can see their environment. They can see it in drought. And that can move them more. Another thing that you might do is put people into the picture to say, oh yeah, there's a human face there. I can see myself talking to this person and see what their problem is and why they're concerned. Another way to do it, photographs, show them what's happening out there. And some things are pretty dramatic. These are the California fires. Again, you put people into them. Is that making it more accessible? Is that making you feel more empathetic to the problem and concerned about it and looking to find some way to fix it? So here we go again. This is somebody, can we connect with this person, digging through the ashes of where she used to live, looking for some type of scrap of what her former life was about? Does that move us? Do we see the old folks getting evacuated in all the smoke? Do we see our own relatives in those faces? Can we empathize with them? This is another way we can show our feelings about the situation. Is political cartooning. That's art as well. All of these things take some artwork, even the maps and graphs. Somebody's got to design those, and how we design them makes a difference in how accessible they are to whoever's looking at them. And now, so I'm going to start showing you some other things that I pulled up about art. Here again is about the California fires. There's Shane Grammer did this series of artworks on the ruins of the fires in California and put faces on the places. How can we connect the faces to the places? And can we use this in some way to get people to feel what's going on? Then you get into the fine art, you look at the galleries, and we've got a lot of things. I pulled up a few things that I like particularly. And I say this without having any knowledge of art whatsoever, except what I see and what I like and don't like. So you might have opinions other than I have. But this is a little piece of art that shows how it's all connected. And that's a big issue when we're talking about civil engagement with social issues, that you can put climate change and any other topic you want to talk about, and they're connected. They're connected. This one says poverty, criminalization, violence, displacement. All of those things are made worse. That all of our problems in our society, all of our weather issues are made worse by climate change. And all of these problems, the social ills, are made worse as climate gets warmer and drier and more erratic. So let me show you how that works in different things. Here's a piece about immigration. You know, you get immigration from all these places. How many of these people are leaving their homelands because they can no longer grow food to feed their kids? That the lands that they're leaving are now too hot and dry for them to be able to get a crop out of. There's a lot of these people all the way around the earth. There's people on our southern borders now that are in this same place. There's a lot of immigrants, such as from Syria. The Syrian wars were not created by climate change, but climate change has nudged them forward. The people there had problems being able to get crops out of their fields. They moved to the cities, couldn't find jobs. It leads to overcrowding. It just creates this domino effect of problems. It exasperates and makes those problems bigger. So you get more conflict in the end. Here's a piece about food. What are our food choices going to be as we are more affected by climate? What do we harvest? What do we get? What can we grow? Who gets to eat what? Those are social issues when you're talking about food deserts and being able to feed people, and what they get to eat matters. Here's on pollution. Of course, there's a big connection here between pollution and climate. All of these gases that are going into the air are affecting the climate, making our climate warmer, but they are also putting a lot of pollutants into the air that affect us, our health. And you get a lot of respiratory diseases and heart diseases because of this kind of pollution. But where does this happen? This happens in those redlined districts. For us, it's East Lubbock, where they've got the industrial areas, which are historically Black and brown neighborhoods. The people who can't afford to go anywhere else, they're the ones that are getting to breathe the polluted air, to drink the polluted water. This is where the fossil fuel industries hide their infrastructure, by taking them into minority and low income neighborhoods. Land use, that's another place where we get a lot of carbon influence. You get, when you till up the ground, you're taking all the carbon out of the soil and releasing it into the atmosphere. There are ways you can do this to farm that keeps that carbon in the ground, that sequesters that carbon in the ground, and ways you do it which release the carbon into the atmosphere. This is a piece of art that was from 1939. So it's the same problem. It's been the same problem all along. You don't do your agricultural practices right, and you will degrade the land, you will degrade the atmosphere, you'll make climate change worse. And this is a mural on the side of a building in Sydney, and talking about, this is going to be about the orangutans and what's going on with the orangutans in Indonesia. And that's a real problem. You're getting you're mixing the issues of land use and protecting species diversification. You know, the orangutans are losing their habitat, and if they don't have any habitat, they're all going to die. And what's happening in Indonesia is they're taking the forest and cutting it down and so that they can plant their palm trees for palm oils. And the orangutans live in the forest, so the orangutans are getting impacted. But not only that, but also the people that live in that area, they are getting co-opted into working on the palm forests, then the palm oil industry. They're not getting treated correctly. They're getting low wages, and they don't have any options because this is where they live. And that's the only business that's in town. You got to work for the palm company. And all these issues go together. The climate change comes from cutting down the forests. And what's the answer, especially when it's a problem like this, where palm oil is so much in all the products that we use? It's not only in our food, but it's also in our healthcare items and creams and lotions and shampoo. It's in our pet foods. It's in our cleaning products, the soaps and things that we use to clean our houses. It's all over the place, and you can't get away from it. And you can't even, as you're looking at the labels, you don't even know it's there because there's like 100 different labels for palm oil. It just doesn't say palm oil on the label. It says a whole lot of things that are also palm oil under any other name. And then there's artwork for protest. Here's the kinds of things I came up with for protest. These are both Native American posters that were engaged to fight the XL pipeline, and talking about what their land and what their water is worth. And we cannot come along and say, no, our interests are greater than yours. We have to protect the land. We have to protect the water. This is where your artwork can come into play too, is to mobilize those communities to protest effectively against whatever the power that's coming in to try to change their way of life. And then finally, the last thing I want to show you is this. This is a campaign, an advertisement campaign launched in 1971, just after the first Earth Day, which was in 1970. And it really moved a lot of people. This was the billboard, but there's also a whole campaign built on this Native American guy who actually turned out to be an Italian, who was playing the Native American. And there was a TV commercial that was with him, and you can see him rowing his canoe through the polluted waters, and then he's standing next to the highway, and somebody drives by and throws a bag of trash at his feet. And right as that happens, a tear falls out of his eye and runs down his cheek, and the narrator says, "People start pollution, people can stop it." And they built this campaign to get people to say, oh, all these single-use products that these companies are making are not a problem. We just have to pick them up. And besides which, we can recycle them all, which was not true. You can't recycle them, but they led this campaign, and it got signed on to by organizations like the National Audubon Society and the Sierra Club. Bought into this because it was such a campaign against littering. But it was run by these corporations who are trying to get you not to worry about the single-use materials that they were selling you, the bottles, the cans, the plastics. And now if you see another campaign like this today, you're not imagining things. They've got a new campaign to make us think that we can recycle not only ones and twos, but that they can recycle all plastics. And it just is not true. So you can watch and be careful about artwork that is made to uh, to uh, to get people to think other than what is true. And you have to be careful that and be able to speak truth to that power and move forward with your own artwork. And with that, I am done with that part of the show. And now I'm looking for conversation and to see what you guys think and to be able to answer your questions. And I see we have lost one person and gained another.
Yep, that's Bob. Bob's doing his project on, well, he can tell you, and I'll let him do it since the others did, Bob. But what I had a quick question. I didn't want to move past it, so we can go. But it was not actually a question, more of a comment. But I was when you were talking about that last slide, I just want everybody to, especially students, to think about propaganda, because that's exactly what that is propaganda. And another person, more contemporary propaganda artist, is Jim Carrey. If you looked at his propaganda art over when Donald Trump was in the presidency, it was pretty intense. He did a whole series for the whole 4 years of propaganda. And then when Donald Trump lost, he quit doing it. So there's this whole series of that, but that is all, propaganda is meant to convince you. There's very little truth in propaganda. It's always on the extreme, and that's one way you can recognize it as propaganda. Now, I love that propaganda against Donald Trump, I'm not going to lie, but it's still propaganda, and which goes back to that whole last slide of the Italian standing on the road and corporations. Nestle is another one that does that. Isn't that right, Susan? You know about Nestle?
Nestle's been, yes. How long have we boycotted Nestle products? Since
20 years.
Now that the issue is the palm oil, but back then the issue was cocoa, was it?
Well, that, and there was also, there's water issues going on because Nestle is draining the aquifers in the Michigan area for free. They don't even have to pay for that water, and then they're turning around and selling it in those little bottles, little bitty,
Yes.
And so and then Coca-Cola is also guilty of water issues in Colombia, where they bought the water system and then have armed guards keeping people from getting water. They get unless they pay for it. Whether they have any money or not, they literally guard the water.
Right.
So that so. That those things are going to get worse as I think as we go with climate change. So that's just what I wanted to comment about how that is moving.
Right.
So
you get those layers overlapping of issues that are happening with Nestle. Now I remember it was with formula for baby formula.
Okay.
And they were selling it to women in the early stages right after their pregnancy. So their babies get started on this Nestle product and their breast milk dries up and they have no way of not buying the products that were being sold to them. And that was Nestle. And I remember having Nestle boycotts however many years ago. It's been a long time.
Well, they're still in the wrong. They're still as bad as ever.
Right.
And I think that those are making those corporations accountable. And just quickly too, and I want Bob to be able to share with you his work, so I'll let it. But also, what other companies right now, here and now, are guilty of these things that we're seeing? Not just the pipeline, but it's all over the place. The corporations, look at the electric corporations doing, not. They're profiting so much that they just don't care what it's doing. And what about crypto accounts? That's one of the biggest environmental burners that's coming up right now in today's world. It's these crypto. Have y'all heard of those? NTSs and crypto. So that, and those take so much internet or so much, right? So there's
so much energy. They're bringing the cryptocurrency miners into Texas because we have good resources of wind and solar, and they can set up their own energy sources, drawing energy from wind and solar to run the cryptocurrency process, this huge process of big computers that take a lot of cooling to keep them running to mine the cryptocurrency. It's a huge power suck.
Yeah, I mean, so we just don't seem to get it, you know? What do you think we need to do? Like in that situation, how do you feel about that? What do we need to do? Is that, or do we just let it go on? Or,
What do you think, Bob? I saw a hand up.
Yeah, I have a different perspective anyway, not talking about my project, but I have a lot of experiences in my life. I'm older and I've done a lot of things, including being a CEO of a very large corporation. And so I keep thinking about climate change because I'm worried about my grandkids. And I agree with everything, Susan, that you've said. I totally do. But we're attacking the problem from the wrong place. And I'll make this a 2-minute thing, in my view. This
Okay.
is my view, is that we're attacking it about where the source of the problem is with corporations. The actual source of the problem is in us. In that way that teachers, firemen, policemen, everybody's invested either in 401ks or some kind of pension plan. Used to be, when my dad was alive, he was able to get a pension. My grandfather got a pension. Germans get pensions, you know, but in America, we shifted everything to 401ks and 403bs and all the different investment opportunities. So what that means is that you have a CEO that gets stock in a short-term lifespan, 2 to 5 years, and their goal is to keep that stock plan up, keep the stock running good, so that somebody that puts $1 in when they're 30, when they get to be 65, will get $3 out. Teachers especially, and all these very powerful groups, these lobbying groups, are supporting these pension plans, these 401k plans, and all that, because if the stock market goes down, and those are the people that vote, by the way, it's not the people that don't vote. That's the people that I'm working with my thing. And so they're going to get all the attention, and almost every president and everybody is going to focus on that. If a stock price goes down and it's in somebody's investment portfolio and their mutual funds go down, they're going to throw a fit. So what happens is, in a global competition with polluters like China and everybody else that's polluting, corporations are looking at what their bottom line is. And I get the argument that CEOs make a ton of money and all that. I was one of them. And so I understand it. But the amount of money that they do make is based on what the profit is in their company. So their motivation is to have as much profit. And the only reason they want to have as much profit is so the stock price, a public company stock price, will be high. And that is driving corporations to make decisions like you mentioned. I'm from Louisiana. So in Louisiana, we have all kinds of bad things going on. And one of them is oil refineries and the way they've trashed the Gulf Coast that I grew up on and love dearly. And they've done that. They go put these refineries and these horrible cancer-causing chemical plants in bad neighborhoods, not to hide there. They do it because it's cheap. You know, so a corporation, when they make a decision like that, they look at the labor base, how much less they can pay them, and they look at how less resources they can get. And they're basically not doing it for any common good than that CEO's 2 to 3 years of life. So, you know, my view, and it's probably just a solo view, is the way to be an activist on this is go after these pension plans. And that's teachers, come up with better ways that they can invest. And I know there's been a movement to invest in environmental plans, but those plans aren't profitable. You know, somebody's going to want to invest. So you go look at your 401k and you're going to find every one of these companies that we've talked about, most of them are in your top picks for your S&P 500. And that S&P 500 is that way. There's where in my view, the crunch is. So, and especially if we're competing in a global market, and globalization that came in during Clinton and everybody else, is that we're competing with people that don't care about climate. You know, I travel a lot overseas and I see them, and it's just not on their agenda. I mean, they're basically short-term thinkers. So America's, like our country, even though I have a long way to go, and my children talk to me all the time about it, is that, I mean, all the time, you'd be surprised. And I think there's a movement to change in America, but the change is going to have to come on your stock plans, because you get a teacher organization that's invested in a stock plan that does not get, a lot of teacher groups do not get Social Security because they're invested through the teacher plans, and they have their stock plan. Teachers don't make a lot of money. They need to retire. They want to retire when they're 65, and they're going to need those stock portfolios to be maxed out. And the average stock portfolio needs to make about 10 to 15%. And a CEO that doesn't do that, if he comes in and says, well, look, I care about environments, I'm going to do that. Then you got employees being laid off. The problem is economics, and it's economics not from the corporation. It's driven by stock price. And that is driven by these large, you look at Fidelity, you look at Vanguard, you look at all of them. And the top money, the trillions of dollars that are in those mutual funds are in teachers. They're public people, teachers. They're people that do not have access to a lot of money and made money in business. They're the people that, are the people that are helping us. I was a college professor for 10 years. It's,
So Bob, what's your answer? What got any ways we could fight this?
If I had the answer, I would be writing about it and I would be
Okay.
super famous. But I do think the problem is that we all start focusing on Nestle and everybody else. And I agree that they're terrible. They're terrible. But I think we need to focus on the why, and the why is stock price. And if we could go back to where I was in Germany just recently, and I went to the it's called something Nussbaum plant, which is the Mercedes plant. And while I was there, I was just curious to go there and look at something. And while I was there, I noticed they don't have worker problems. They just don't. And the reason they don't have worker problems is they compete for pension plans. So if you're a worker in Germany and some of these other countries, if you're going to go work and they're going to train you to work on their plans, they got to pay you a pension, and you're motivated by that pension to have that plan. In America, we depend on Social Security and things like that. And so,
all right, Bob, I'm going to give you this.
That's just my perspective, and I may be totally
okay.
wrong. I don't know.
I agree with everything you said. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the Citizens Climate Lobby way to deal with this. And that's through a carbon fee and dividend.
I know about that. Yes.
Okay. And that's the legislation that CCL is really, that's what they're built for. That's their holy grail, is to get carbon fee and dividend. And
globally.
Well, yes, because, okay. So let me explain this to you. You sound like you know what I'm talking about, Bob.
I do know about that. Yeah.
Maybe Jane and Chris don't. So let me tell you what this is. This is putting a price on carbon so that when it comes out of the ground in whatever way it comes, that you get a fee imposed upon you, that the government takes those fees and then gives them back to the people. So we might say we want $20 a ton of carbon fee. So the fossil fuel companies, when they dig up the fossil fuels, they're charged that. If there are goods coming from overseas and that comes from a country who is not imposing a fee on their carbon, then you impose that fee at the port. Anything coming into the US gets charged the carbon fee as well. And all those dividends don't go to the US government. They come back to the citizens in checks, just kind of like you got your stimulus check. You would get a check regularly from the government, which is the carbon dividend from those fees. And over time, what that does is it makes it so if companies are using renewable energy, if they're reducing their carbon output, that they will be making products that are less expensive because they won't have those fees charged to them. And so over time, it pushes the market in that direction. And that's, CCL is nonpartisan. And this is a plan that a lot of Republicans have bought into it because it's market-based. And so you've got a lot of, and still you've got a lot of Republicans who are following in the lines of the old ways of saying, well, no, it's all a hoax and we're not going to deal with it. But you've got a lot of prominent Republicans who are buying into this. The
Good.
question for me is how much, what's that price we're putting on carbon? Is $20 enough? Do we need a $50 fee? What do we need to make this price high enough?
But explain how doing that is going to make companies such as fossil fuel companies and the oil industry, especially down south and in this area, how are those carbon fees going to make them stop production, stop doing what polluting as bad as they do? Because it's not just in the skies, all that mess they make, as you said. So how does that fee make them stop?
Well, what happens is when that fossil fuel company goes to sell the fossil fuels to somebody else, that will cost more than it used to because of the fee that has been imposed upon it, as compared to a similar company who produces energy from wind and solar and other renewable sources that don't have those carbon fees on their products. Who's going to buy the energy from a fossil fuel company if that energy costs more than they are if they get it from a renewable source?
So then the fossil fuel should invest, the expectation is in the fossil fuel is going to invest more in the greener, which they're probably already doing to some extent because it's green is picking up. So,
yep.
Okay.
So yeah, either that or they're going to go out of business. They're just not competitive in the market.
Fossil fuels are done. So just, I can tell you now, I can tell you that I live in New Mexico and there's a legislation going on, right? It's not written yet, but almost anybody that buys a new house, builds a new house, going to have solar now. And so
Good.
I have solar. So it won't be long. We're going to all be independent. Everybody I know that's buying trucks are buying electric.
Yep.
I mean, and it's the Mercedes electric truck. That's what I was interested in it. And Ford has a new one that just came out too. That's really, really strong. I mean, it's really strong.
Toyota's going to have one coming too. Yeah.
Fossil fuels. I mean, if you buy a fossil fuel car now, you might as well put it in a museum because they're not going to last.
Not in West Texas. If you look at what New Mexico is doing compared to what we're doing here, it's a lot better. New Mexico is doing a lot of work on reducing methane at the wellhead. Right. And Texas is so bad about releasing and flaring methane at oil and gas wellheads.
Not to disparage you, but I don't understand Texas at
all.
Oh
gosh, I don't either.
And
in terms of electric vehicles, I was just talking to a dealer a week or two ago about bringing in electric cars, and he says, that's just not going to happen here because you can't get to, from Lubbock, you can't get to any place else without driving 6 hours. And how long is it going to take those little bitty towns in between here and Dallas, or in between here and Albuquerque? How long is it going to be before Hobbs goes electric?
Well, I will tell you that the infrastructure bill that's coming in has a lot of electric put in. I'm a big fan of it. I use it. I know it. I feel like I know it pretty well. The technology on lithium batteries is going to be revolutionary in 4 to 5 years. The only problem is disposable of the batteries, but the technology, the technology. So I'm telling you that I would sell any stock you had in any company that's not going electric. The only mistake we had was the Biden administration had an EV big meeting, and I'm not a Republican, so I'm not going to say that, but I did vote for him. But they had a big they did have a big meeting, and they left Tesla out of the meeting and only brought in the big three because they were lobbied by the Democrats in Congress not to take Tesla out and bring in Ford, GM, and Chrysler to the meeting, and they made a lot of important recommendations. But Tesla is leading the world, as you probably know, in EV technology in their battery system. So I'll shut up because I've been talking too much. But that is, I
tell you
really
another-
feel.
I'll tell you something about the infrastructure bill that I noticed. I'm working here in it. We have a lot of wind and solar potential in this part of the state. We could be sending this energy off to all kinds of places,
And you should be.
but
Mhm.
we don't have the connectivity between the Texas grid and the other grids. And we don't have any transmission ability to send it anywhere. Our transmission lines are full. They built new ones. They finished in 2014. They built $7 billion worth of transmission lines into West Texas to get that renewable energy. They are completely full now. We are going to need more energy. We're going to need more electricity for us to go to electric vehicles. And it's not happening here because there's no transmission. And they're not looking at any new transmission. That's not in the infrastructure bill.
Well, that's sad to hear. I thought it was. There was some about the new grid, especially with Texas, what they went through last year.
I know. And,
Don't start me.
yeah, but you know what?
Yes.
I don't live there. There's a reason.
Well, but the other
They
thing,
need us though. Bob.
yeah,
They need us.
Too old for that.
Yeah. well, and you have to remember too, is that, and I'm not defending them because I actually raised my kids in Colorado and Arizona and then ended up back here. But the culture, it's the cultures here that are digging their heels in. And Chris and I talked about that before Susan got on. And same is true over there in the Cole County. She's nodding her head. The cultures here have been shit on, Bob, by the government, over and over and over again. But not just Republicans, but Democrats too. I mean, like we were talking about Democrats bringing in private prisons, the deplorable with the deplorable. And here we go, the whole world loving oil, that oil companies never had any intention of cleaning up, but convinced, got people hooked into you can't live without the job. All those things that are true for people, the working class in these industries. So it's a lot of misinformation going on and a lot of deep-seated distrust for government. And another
They
thing,
should have succeeded when they wanted to.
yeah, you actually think that that's a possibility, and it's kind of scary, Bob, because if you live here and you're not in that and you're liberal, I mean, it's easy when you're protected, but when you're literally living in a situation where somebody might burn your house down because you have a different opinion than them, it's not as easy to do. And there's people, Susan knows this too, there's people that talk about succeeding. Look at Ted Cruz. He's our senator. Look what he said about, did you read the article about what he said about succession? So yeah, he's starting to say it. So, it's kind of, we're in a scary place, but we need people. Susan's right. Texas has more resources than a lot of this country. And
Yes.
yeah, and we need people
So,
to change that.
you were talking about how we're doing well with our congressional representative about talking to him about wind and solar. And that's because we have learned out here in West Texas that if we go into a legislator and start talking to him about climate change, that conversation is ended. That is, you're done. You're out the door and you're not going to be asked back. But if we go in there and say, we have commodities which we could monetize for your constituency,
That's
we
the way
can
to
do
do it.
this. And
Always
that's what
economic.
I swear. Jody Arrington is our congressional rep, and we've been talking to him now for a couple of years. I swear he's changed his tune. He's started singing the praises of wind and solar. So this last week, we talked to the guy that's a congressional representative just north of us in the Panhandle. And he is not there at all. And we're saying, look, Jody Arrington is saying this. This is what's happening in his counties where they're bringing in wind and solar, and look at all the money they're making. Look at what their tax structure is doing. You could do that for your region too, for your constituency, and they start listening to that.
But
Yeah,
it's sad that you have to,
It's the population
yeah,
that votes these people in, and they're going to go with the public opinion of their population, even if
Yep.
it's against their own personal moral values.
And
I
that's what
know.
CCL is all about, is building that political will, getting the citizens educated and pushing on their representatives in these kinds of ways so that you can have a conversation, finding common ground and finding that way you can have that conversation to move them, to nudge them a little bit down the line, a little bit here and a little bit there, and we'll get there. It's a long, hard road, but we don't have any other options.
Well,
We don't have, there's nothing else we can do.
the more that climate change affects people, the more people are going to step up and say something. And what I'm disappointed in, to be honest with you, and it's nobody that I can see on this, which tells me a lot, that's here today, is young people. They're the ones that are going to, I mean, we're not going to be here. It's,
Right.
they are going to be dramatically affected, and they should be involved in this conversation more than just social media. And they're not. And, you know, I grew up during the
And-
Vietnam War. I was out there knowing that I might get drafted and go to Vietnam if I'm not careful. And we were active, you know, and we had some reason to be. And I'm disappointed that, you know, when you talk about climate change, they make it a very political issue. They love to talk about it, and they write about it and they do it, but they're not engaged. And I don't know
Yep.
what to do to get them engaged.
I've been working on the college students. I've been working on the high school students. I have not figured out how you trying to beat them upside the head and trying to get them to understand that this is
future.
important.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
all they care about is having something good to put on their resume. I was president of the climate club at Lubbock High School. It's like, that doesn't get it. Don't you understand how important this is?
Well,
I
the
don't know how to
problem
do
is
this,
it's a
Bob. I've been
systemic
trying and I
problem.
don't know
Yeah.
how to do it yet.
There you go. That was the answer. It's systemic. It
Big
is.
problem. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have any confidence either, but I love this conversation.
But
And,
I'll tell you the best thing that you can do for climate change issues is talk about it.
Yeah.
If we can just get people to talk about it. So, you know, take this conversation to somebody that you may not think has as much knowledge about you as climate change, and talk to them about it. Pay attention when it comes across your newspaper, when it comes across your TV screen, and then share it with people. That's the
And-
best thing we can do.
And like Catherine Hayhoe said, is meeting people where they are in their culture, you know, the whole evangelicals. Like I told Susan, my mother literally told her, she's 90, you know, so I give her that. But she literally told me that she thinks that we're having all these horrible storms and stuff because people don't go to church anymore and the Lord is mad. You know, but she really, and I just said, okay, like I totally hear what you're saying, because I mean, I could never believe that because I don't believe in God that way, but I could never even get in anywhere in the ballpark. But still, the idea, we need to address it in a way that they can hear it. That in the Bible, it says we got to find passages like she does that are in the Bible that they'll listen to, you know, about, that's why I like Catherine Hayhoe for this area,
Yeah.
because she is smart enough to realize if she doesn't address it in a way that, and my mom's not like a crazy fanatic. She's a Presbyterian. I mean, they are the frozen chosen. I'm not gonna lie, but you know, still, you know. So anyway, but I love this conversation too. But I think you're right. We have to talk about it, and we have to meet people where they are, and try not to be, which is my biggest flaw. I think sometimes is try not to judge their ideas, because a lot of times if they're like the one that my mom had, it seems so ludicrous to me. I just can't even imagine why it come out of someone's mouth. And so but that's not going to make my mom want to talk to me about climate change either.
Right.
To say that, you know,
There's a lot of good people out there who just have bad ideas. And
yeah,
last thing I want to say is I can send you references for all kinds of things. I'm up to my ears in references. So any questions you have, any questions that any of your students have, Jane, send them to me and I'll do my best. I'll find the answers, or I'll find the person that can answer it for you.
well, I will. And, you know, these students, I was disappointed. I'm not, you know, majorly disappointed, but there's like 6 people that are doing climate change projects. And it's a little disappointing to see if, because, you might could just turn it on your phone if you're driving, and stuff like that. So like Bob said, they're younger students,
Well,
so hopefully they'll watch this, and.
they'll watch the recording.
Yeah,
They'll be mad at me.
Bob, I'll be glad that,
Now,
Bob,
why?
that's how I'm gonna, that's how I'm gonna get them to watch it. I'm gonna say, I want you guys to go in there and listen to Bob, because he's
I
giving you a
can,
bunch of
look,
shit.
I can handle it. I've been there a lot.
Yeah, I can tell, Bob, you're quite the leader. So, and yeah, we see it in the way that you engage actually with everybody. So in a really good way. So it's good emotional maturity. So I'm glad you said that stuff, because I'm going to tell them to watch it, and so that they can see and challenge us. It's a good thing,
Right.
to,
Right.
yeah. So
Let's have that conversation.
Yeah.
So any of your students that want to talk to me, I'm all ears.
okay. Well,
All right.
Suze, it's been a real pleasure, and I can't tell you how grateful I am that you came, because it was a very good lecture. Thank you.
Well, thanks for
and-
having me.
Mhm.
I was
Well-
glad to be able to come and talk to y'all.
Well, you definitely kept our attention, and, did a really great job. And you were right. You made it relate to my art class.
There you
So,
go.
yeah, she told me, I think I got
You
this,
know,
y'all.
I don't know anything about art. I won't claim
You did
any knowledge there, but
Well, you
trying
have a
to.
piano behind you. I think you do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't play the piano.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not my piano, but yeah.
Anyway, all
I got
right.
artwork back there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Susan,
Yeah.
before you go,
Yes.
look into ADT in Florida. Our daughter just had a house built. She's 24, by the way. And they moved into it, and ADT paid to blanket the entire roof of their house with solar. And it's a program they have going on. This is outside of Tampa and Ruskin. And I think she's paying $100 a month for the
Wow.
solar, but they're mining what each house produces, and it's being sent back as energy to the
So
electric.
it's a community
Mhm.
collective organization. Now, what do they do if you're not in the sunlight hours? How do they
I
have a way to
don't
store
know.
that?
I'm
Battery-
not sure. I don't know.
Okay,
Batteries.
I'll look into it.
Yeah, I don't know if
Batteries,
she's
yeah,
got,
yeah.
did they
Now-
put batteries on her house? It's just grid tied. So they're literally
Okay.
just an electric farm.
Okay,
But
yeah. And how can we get them off the grid and have them
mhm.
their own little distributed energy community? And how do you do
Mhm.
that? And tomorrow night, the Lubbock chapter CCL is sponsoring a talk by a battery engineer who is putting
Mhm.
battery packs, battery storage into a wind farm that they're building in Texas, and they're putting in huge amounts of batteries. And I can't wait to hear what he has to say about the environmental impact of these things, and how do you deal with them? What's their lifespan? What do you do with them afterwards? What
I'd
happens?
love to hear about that, because we
Well-
bought in a group buy, and we've got solar for our entire cabin, and it's just sitting in storage right now on our property, and we're searching for batteries.
I have one. I have one on my property I'm sitting in now, and I love it.
Mhm.
So
Well, if you want to,
Well-
if you want to join that conversation, now this is on a utility scale. You're talking personal scale. It's a little
Mhm.
different, but our meeting is open to any comers. It's on Zoom. So if you want to join it, I'll send the link to Jane. And
Didn't I already put it out there for you guys? I
you
think-
did.
Yeah, I did. I sent it out already, Susan. I'm on the ball.
okay.
Yeah, I got this. Well,
Well, now-
most of the time I am. I get distracted. We're not gonna lie, but I definitely.
So that's
on the
happening
ball.
tomorrow at 7. So, come on and join us, and I, happy to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Susan.
Well, listen, I'm gonna go ahead and let us click off so I can go get my mom's groceries.
There you go.
Before she goes to bed. And, but anyway, I actually love spending this much time with her, because I haven't in years, so it's kind of cool. She's killing me with stories, and yeah, all kinds of stories that are to do with activism. I'm like, wow. So
Well, it was nice to talk to all of you, and
Thank you so much.
thank you for the
Enjoyed it very much.
conversation.
Yeah.
yeah, me
All right.
too. Y'all have a good night, you guys. We'll see
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.
And Bob, your crit's on. Your Chris and Slack.
Oh, okay. I'll
You
look at
and
it.
Chris. Okay. All right. See you later. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Susan.
Bye-bye.